we're going to open the meeting and call it to order. It's a community forum, but we're calling it to order because we have a quorum of our board here. So, Lisa, are you ready to go with us? So it's 6:03, I think it is. And we're going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank you, both the people online and the people in person, for joining us today. We really appreciate that you're taking part of this important conversation. I'd like to start by welcoming our principal and our superintendent and the leadership team from Turtle Island. Gillian and Stephen are here today to help guide the discussion and answer any questions as we move forward together. Additionally, Phoebe, do you mind just raising your hand and standing up? From Turtle Island is here, and there's several other people from Turtle Island you can wave. She's going to answer any questions related to how they currently operate, and also they're here to explore whether this partnership makes sense for them. Let's make sure that we extend a warm welcome to them and we make them feel part of our community. Please join me also in welcoming the board members who are spread around because we're in this together, so you guys can wave too. And there's some board members online too that couldn't get here quickly enough from work. And we're all here to be listeners in chief, is what I call it. So most importantly, to hear your thoughts and your ideas. We're committed to providing you with as much clarity as you need today with the information that we have up to today. As we dive into this conversation today, please remember to keep it respectful and kind. Our goal is to model for our children, who are all around here, how to approach challenges, opportunities, and how to problem solve together. We want to set an example of how we engage with each other with respect, collaboration, and understanding. I want to emphasize that there's been several questions asked, and just want to emphasize that we are all dedicated to the well-being of all of our students, including the Doty schools students. Every decision we make is rooted in a desire to provide the best opportunities for every child in our district. We believe that this partnership will strengthen, not detract from our public education system. Early care and education are critical to family well-being, school readiness, and long-term community sustainability. This initiative is about thinking holistically and inclusively about how we serve our students and our families across the district. As we move forward, our board, our superintendent, and the leadership team will continue to carefully weigh the impact of this decision, considering both the short-term and the long-term effects. We're not taking this lightly, and that's why we're here with you. All of our board was fully supportive on exploring this opportunity. Some of this I had said in several emails, but I wanted to make sure that everybody hears the same information and not everybody's keeping up with all of the emails from different people. I also want to say that it's important to note that as a school board, our role is to set the overall direction and the vision for our district. We work closely with the superintendent, who is responsible for the day-to-day operations, including managing staff, programs, and services. The superintendent takes the board vision and translates it into action. We as a board do not get involved in the daily management, but we focus on policy, budgeting, and long-term goals, and we listen to our community to come up with those. Our goal is to provide oversight and support and guidance, ensuring that the superintendent has the resources and the direction that is needed to make informed decisions. Thank you again for being with us today. I'm now going to pass it to our superintendent.
Thank you, Flor, and thank you everybody for being here, both in person and online. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Stephen Dellinger-Pate. I'm the superintendent here in the district. And I just want to say just a couple of things, and then I'm going to turn this over to Gillian to really start through most of our presentation to try to answer some of the questions tonight. I got an email back in February. That's what started this process from Turtle Island. And so that is February 17th is when this kicked off for us as a possibility of what kind of partnership could we develop with them. And through our earliest conversations, we felt like Doty was a school that met a lot of the criteria for them and gave us an opportunity to create a model for early childhood education and care that we could possibly look at expanding throughout our district as well. And one of the things that we hoped as well that this would be able to provide our Worcester families access to early child care and a pre-K program that kept children as close to home as possible. Right now we have 2 or 3 pre-K students that are from Worcester that would be attending a pre-K program in the school. And so, so we don't have enough students to make that a viable program on its own. And so this was an opportunity for us to potentially have a robust pre-K program here for our kids. We also saw in our earliest suggestions here of moving the 5th and 6th grade to Rumney was being able to expand their social circles and their social network for those 5th and 6th graders and provide them more access to a more robust music program, PE programs, and really a greater diversity of peers and an opportunity for unique and more diverse groupings of students as well. And I would say that one of the things, and we've talked about this before, was the transportation issue. One of the things that we've seen in our early exploration is that we can reduce bus service times for our students by having a more integrated bus routes between Worcester and Middlesex, and this is the challenge that our bus company is looking at. There's a lot of details to this, and Gillian's going to be able to go through a few of those and really kind of outline our kind of our hopes for the future in all of this. And then we hopefully will have an opportunity to answer some questions. I know we will have an opportunity to answer some questions. And there might be a few that we're not able to answer tonight that we'll get to as quickly as possible. We have posted on our website the frequently asked questions that have already started to come up. And we've also got a memo there that gives a little more information as well that's along with this. And so with this, I want to turn this over to Gillian and let her take the rest of this. You just push the button. There you go.
Okay, so can we pull up the slides? So welcome and thank you. I did put some slides together just for a couple of visuals, but mostly, honestly, to keep myself organized and on track. So one thing that I also just want to reiterate before we get started is Doty is a community that thrives on respect. And one of the things that we work with students is that oftentimes when we have big feelings, there is never anything wrong with having a big feeling. There is never anything wrong with the emotion itself. It is what we do with those emotions. And so I'd like to reiterate what Flor said in that I'll be perfectly frank, my expectation is that we all speak to each other with a tone of respect and kindness. Feelings are fine. It's what we do with them. And it is not my style to have different standards for adults than I have for children. And Doty students can do it, and I know that they've learned those skills somewhere, and they've learned it from you. So I'm looking forward to having a respectful, probably emotional conversation. So just a quick outline of what we're going to do is, first off, I want to answer that first question of how does this partnership help Doty remain viable? Then we're going to go through and answer the FAQs. And then we can take any additional questions or comments that people might have. So that's the general outline of the evening. So if we could have the next slide. So how does this help Doty remain viable into the future? The bottom line is there are not young children in Worcester in large quantities. So what we did with this table is we went through the Worcester annual report and pulled out the births, the announced births in the Worcester town report from the vital records. And then the way we organized them is because school enrollment is not based on the calendar year. It goes from September 1st, sorry, that's backwards. No, yeah, it goes from September 1st to 8/31. What we did is we took it so that we had the students who were eligible to enter kindergarten in that year. So if you were to look at the vital records in the town record, you see that the numbers aren't going to match, but that's because we took the kids, the post-cutoff kids, the post-September 1st kids are reflected in the following year because that's when they would be able to enroll. So what we can see is that next year, I believe when I was monkeying around with this, it's an error. It should be we're anticipating having 8 kindergartners next year. For school year 26-27, it drops to 3.
Recording in progress.
27-28, it's 3. 28-29, it's 6. And 29-30, it's 4. These are very low numbers. They make it very hard to maintain good, robust education unless you start thinking and doing things in an innovative way. And that's one thing that we've been thinking about on a district level, and I've been thinking about a great deal in terms of Doty. When I took this job, I said I was going to retire from Doty. And that's still my plan, is to retire from Doty. And at one point early in my career, somebody said to me, well, they just want to close Doty. And I said, over my dead body. And I take that seriously. We need to think really creatively and really innovatively. These numbers are deeply concerning. These numbers mean that in the school year of 2029-2030, we will have 40 children at Doty if we stay K through 6. Okay, the next slide, please. Maybe. The other things that we know is we know that in the district configuration committee, a couple of themes came out. One was a real desire to keep youngest learners close to home. Another thing is that the configuration committee is currently talking about a 6th through 8th grade middle school model. The district has also this year joined into merger, whether it's whatever the merger looks like, full, partial, whatever merger conversations with the Montpelier School District, and the Montpelier School District has an existing 5 through 8 middle school model. So we are really looking at, across the district, having at least 6th graders and possibly 5th and 6th graders moving out of elementary schools into a middle school model. I used to hold out for people moving to Worcester with children. The nationwide birth rate is down. I linked just a citation from the CDC, but the nationwide birth rate is down, and the headlines continually say year after year, they are reaching historic lows. That's concerning. The other thing we know is there's a shortage of childcare across central Vermont. There are people who are not having more children because there are not childcare centers available for them. Okay, the next slide, please. We have a number of unknown factors going on as well. We don't know whether or not any conversations that we have, we don't know whether or not it's going to be a 5 through 8 middle school or a 6 through 8 middle school. We know there's going to be a middle school, but we don't know which it's going to be. There is all the talk that's happening in the state right now. And no matter, I think I'm blocking the number of the bill out of my mind, but the education bill. The number of state districts, final districts, is up for debate. But it is not going to be as many as we have now. I've heard, sort of most recently, what I've heard is 14, having them organized around the tech centers. but we don't know how many that's going to be. And we don't know how the state, critically, we don't know how the state is going to define small by design. There's talk at the state about, is a small school small by necessity, which they also haven't defined, and small by design, which they haven't defined. So we don't know what that means. Doty is currently in an incredibly vulnerable position. I see no way to sugarcoat it, and I see no way to say it any differently than that. Doty is in an incredibly vulnerable position unless we do something different. Now, at this point, what I'd like to acknowledge is that there's something different. This is not an either or right now. This is both and. Do I wish that I had had more time to work with my students, to work with my families, to work with my community about this? Absolutely, 100%, I wish I had more time. Do I also recognize that, at the same time that Turtle Island was reaching out to Stephen and I had seen the things in the newspaper, I was starting to think, and some of my staff and I were starting to think, ooh, is there a way that Doty can help out Turtle Island? Because when we're educators, we are not, of course, Worcester kids are my heart. But all kids are my heart. There's a reason why I work with children. I love children. And I want children to be able to grow and thrive. And so I cannot, in good conscience, turn my back on kids and families in need. That is fundamentally not who I am as a person. I also recognize that this means I've had longer times to think about it and digest it. And I want to name that, and I want to recognize it. This, because of the stuff that's like on the district level and the legal level and all that stuff, there were things that we just couldn't disclose. So I want to recognize that I've had longer to digest this and think about it and mourn the change. Change is hard. There are things, change is something to be mourned at times. And we have an opportunity to think about, what does this mean for Doty's future? What does this mean for Doty in 5 years? What does this mean for Doty in 10 years? This is what we have the opportunity to do. And how we frame it to ourselves and how we frame it to our students is what really matters. So, if we do nothing innovative, I honestly don't see how Doty could survive, because we don't have the children. I would say something really, really different if we had the children. But we don't have them coming. We have to do something innovative. Now, like I said, would I prefer to do this and start talking with folks about this in December, January? Absolutely. Did something fall into our laps that has the potential and can be really, really exciting? Yes. So this is both hard in the fact that it is happening very abruptly. And this is why it is something that I believe can help maintain Doty's viability into the future. Because as these shifts change and happen on a statewide level, if we are one of the first, I know of one other school in the state that partners with early child care. If we are on the cutting edge, if we are one of the first people who are doing this, we are protected because we are the first people. We're the pilot. We're the people who are showing the way. Not just for the district, but we're showing the way for the entire state. We have the opportunity to reimagine early childhood education. So we're not just talking about looking at kids from pre-K to 12. We're talking about looking at kids from birth to 12. We're talking about expanding opportunities and access, eventually, a dream on the statewide level, where we can look at improving outcomes for students because we have a partnership where we're looking at really young children. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And if we are doing it first, if we are doing it before the proverbial brown stuff hits the fan on the state level and everything gets reorganized, we don't have the appearance of scrambling. We don't have the appearance of being like, oh, crap, we better do something so we don't get close, because we're already doing it, and we're already a model. That's how this helps Doty remain viable in the future. Is it hard? Absolutely. Change is always hard. Does it position Doty really well? Absolutely. Absolutely. Next slide, please. So I know there has been a lot of questions about square footage and utilization of space. So one of the things is about thinking about how do we share our space, which in a way that allows Doty to keep a lot of space. And one thing that I want to just make sure people are clear of, and if I get feedback, I'm sorry. So this is the area that would be leased to Turtle Island. This is what would remain. So Turtle Island would be being leased 4,353 square feet. Doty would retain 7,329 square feet of student space. It also would retain access to some pretty critical infrastructure pieces. It retains access to our enhanced security in our entrance. And space can be reconfigured. Doty has done it many times. My office used to be a staff room, and then it was a classroom, and then before that it was the library, and then the library was over there, and then the library was over here. Doty has a long history of reconfiguring space. It's something that we're good at. Next slide. Oh. So at this moment, we're going to pull up the FAQ. And we'll go through those. So just while we're getting those pulled up, to let you know how I did these. So at our meeting on the 17th, 18th, the Thursday before April break, gathered a bunch of questions. So I took those, and then I split those from, I think I called it operational. Those were the questions, honestly, that I knew I could answer, that they were very Doty local. And then I did district level questions. So that's what I did with those first set of questions. And then I went through the community letter, and I did what's called a crosswalk, where I looked at the community letter and the questions that were raised in the community letter, and if they'd already been answered, I didn't repeat them. Then I made sure I captured the questions from the community letter onto the FAQ. Oh, it's really big. Oh, so the first question was about enrollment projections for, sorry, I got thrown off by how big that was. The first question was about enrollment projections. That's what I went through before, scrolling down. And next question was why the 3-6 wing and not the primary wing. The 3-6 wing is able to be isolated from the rest of the building. Keeping the primary wing continues to allow us access to the kitchen, to the gym, to the library. There was a lot of questions about art and music. It is not going to be art on a cart. It is not going to be music on a cart. I've met with the music teacher and the art teacher and talked about some possible options. The staff and I met today and we talked about, because one of the things, I'm going to move out of my office. I'm going to take out a closet, make that a bigger space. So there's going to be some reconfiguring in the front office, which is poorly utilized space at this moment anyway. So we've talked about ways we can creatively schedule, because what it's looking like next year is our 3-4 is going to be a bigger classroom. So looking at how can we creatively work with the schedule to ensure that we're not putting 19 students into a smaller space. There will be an art classroom. There will be a music classroom. So there will also still be single grade math instruction continuing, and that space will still be there as well. There are going to be shared spaces, but we currently have shared spaces. Shared spaces are nothing new here. Small by design. The hope is that by doing this, we will already be small by design. Like I said earlier, in terms of it is better to be on the leading edge than on the following edge. So the increased opportunities for 5th and 6th graders, and I apologize that these are a bit all over the place. The primary one is this. When you have a small school, there are a lot of really great things that happen, and there are a lot of challenges, particularly as students get older. Young children play by proximity. They form relationships through proximity. I'm here, you're here, let's play. That's how young children work. As children grow and develop, their friendships and their social connections are less based on proximity and more based on affinity. I like soccer, you like soccer, let's be friends. I like art, you like art, let's be friends. Every year that I've been here, and I've spoken with people who have much more seniority than I have, there are very frequently 5th and 6th grader who don't find that affinity partner, particularly when we have small cohorts. So we have students who are lacking a good friend or a strong social connection. It happens every year. And we always say, just wait till you get to U32. It's going to be so much better when you get to U32 because you're going to find your people. If we have larger 5th and 6th graders, am I ready to let go of my 4th and 5th grade kiddos? No, I love them. I really want to have them all the time that I can. But do I want them to be happy? Yes, I do. I do. And so they have these, by being in classes, in larger classes, the likelihood of having that child who is sort of the person without a country is much lower. People will find their people. Academically, we're projected to have 4 6th graders next year. Oops, only one of whom will be a boy. You don't get robust discussions when you only have 4 voices in the room. And particularly as students age and the curriculum moves more from right and wrong answers into more abstract thinking or more learning to develop arguments to support a point of view. You need more ideas in the room to push thinking. And when you only have a few people in the room to push the thinking, it's not as robust. The other thing is Doty has been blessed with wonderful music teachers who have figured out how to make ensembles. And we don't really have a band. PE, we have great, we can't play, it's very hard to sort of play a team sport or a team game in PE classes if you don't have the numbers to support it. It also, we already have combined teams for sports, particularly on the 5th and 6th grade level. So one of the questions also was, how does this work with the budget? How does it impact future budgets? Budgets are determined based on the long-term weighted average daily membership. That's how we build our budgets. As the census decreases, so does it's proportional. If you have 100 students at, and this is the long-term weighted average daily membership figure that you get X amount of money. So you have 100 students, you get $1 per kid, you have $100 to play with. When you have 50 students, you get $1 per kid and you have $50 to play with. Because you have fewer kids, you have fewer needs. Does that make sense? So negotiating the outdoor spaces and access to woods, one of the things that Phoebe spoke with the licensing people at length about was how that works. And it's actually much better news than what we had originally thought. Doty students and Turtle Island children can be outside at the same time. The way it works is if a Turtle Island child needs to use the restroom, a Turtle Island staff needs to take the child inside. If a Doty student needs to be let inside to use the restroom, a Doty staff lets them in. Okay, so it's that the Turtle Island, that it is clear the way it would work is that it is clear that Turtle Island staff is responsible for Turtle Island students, and Doty staff is responsible for Doty students. So we can be outside at the same time. We can be accessing the same resources at the same time. The summer use of the playground would be the same. Turtle Island staff is responsible. You are responsible for your child. Turtle Island staff is responsible for their children. It does not restrict access. Oh, transportation. So Stephen touched on this one briefly. This is something, when we brought the Middlesex kindergartners over for kindergarten, we thought transportation was going to be really easy, and it wasn't. And we learned a tremendous amount. One of the things that also has been a theme that's been arising a lot in board meetings is the length of the bus ride for Doty students is disproportionately long to that of other students. We currently have Doty students who are on the bus for an hour and a quarter, which is not good. The other thing is that we have been starting to explore is, as Stephen said, looking at how do we combine bus runs. And this is something that we had started discussing prior to even the Turtle Island discussions, because the Doty bus routes need to be shorter. Sort of letting go of this idea of that Middlesex children ride a bus that only drives in Middlesex, and Worcester children drive a bus that only drives in Worcester. So if we let go of that idea and we think about not which town kids live in, but we think about what makes sense in terms of geography, then we're able to say, okay, we actually have 3 buses at our disposal, not just one. And so the idea of also that would require that we stagger the start and end times of Doty and Rumney. So for example, currently Doty, we open our doors at 8:40. We open our doors at the same time. It could mean that, and I have to wait for the transportation people, but it would mean that, say, Doty opens its doors at 8:30 and dismisses 10 minutes earlier than Rumney does. Because that would be the way to make it work in terms of the transportation. I really would like to get this nailed down much sooner rather than later. I've already been in contact with the bus company and the transportation people about, and being the gadfly that says, let's get this figured out, let's get this figured out. So that change would have happened anyway, as a way of alleviating the lengthy bus rides that Worcester children now have. There was questions about pre-K access, the Worcester pre-K students having access to breakfast and lunch, WCUUSD field trips, ECO. Breakfast and lunch is, the universal free breakfast and lunch is dictated through child nutrition. Pre-K students are eligible for the universal free lunch under child nutrition. How we would execute that at Doty, I don't know yet, because that would be something that we would have to work out with child nutrition. Because one of the lingering questions that I have that I would want to work out is, with a partnership such as this with an early child care center, would this be then something that could be extended to them? I don't know, I can't speak intelligently about that, but it's on the radar to look at. Field trips, honestly, the Doty pre-K has not traditionally joined in many of our field trips because the needs are so different. And ECO would actually increase access because Turtle Island is a nature-based preschool program. Parking, drop-off, pickup. I spoke with John Keating about this earlier. This isn't the excellent kick in the pants that I need to address the parking lot signage that we have, where the entrance to the parking lot tells you that it's one way in both directions. So, and every morning I drive in and I go, oh, I really need to get those signs fixed. And then, of course, I come into the classroom or come into the building and I'm like, signs? What signs? I don't know about anything about signs. So this is actually the kick in the pants that I need anyway to rectify the signage in the parking lot. In terms of traffic on Callis Road and traffic through the parking lot, is one of the things to keep in mind is that Doty previously has had censuses of up to 110, between 110 and 120 kids. So it is not unheard of for there to be that level of traffic on either Callis Road or going through the parking lot. Parking lot safety is, as the kids will tell you, is one of my things, and as the staff will tell you, it's totally one of my things. And then all of you guys who tolerate my emails about this is how we're doing drop off and pick up. It is honestly one of the most dangerous points in the school day because it is the time of day when you have the most risk factors for an accident. So we'll improve the signage, have it be one way, clearly delineate who drops off where, how drop-off happens, work with Turtle Island about what is their drop-off procedure, are there ways that their drop-off procedure could be changed, and looked at that way. In terms of students who walk or bike to school, we have always set clear expectations with students about here's how you walk through the parking lot, here's how you bike or walk through the parking lot. We don't, in terms of safety on Callis Road, if we see some student doing something dangerous on Callis Road, I'll pick up the phone and call a parent and say, oh, Floor, your kid, not so great on the bicycle. You're gonna wanna review some expectations about how to be safe. And if a student, and it's happened in the past that we've had students who have struggled to make safe choices and follow expectations in the parking lot, then I call the family and I say, your students lost the privilege of riding a bike to school because they are not safe in the parking lot. And that would remain there. Questions about parking. We have a lot of space. that we can utilize for parking. The facilities director and I walked around over break, looked at both internal spaces and ways that we could reconfigure this end of the building, batted around a lot of ideas. And then we also looked at the exterior, because the Doty parking lot has been problematic for a long time in a lot of different ways. So it has long been a conversation. But we believe that we do have the space to accommodate the parking here at Doty. This is where Stephen gets to jump up and help me when I'm not saying things right. So the number of transitions for students in various schools. It's important to remember with equity. Equity does not mean equal, it does not mean the same. Does this mean that Worcester students for the short term will have more transitions than other students from other schools? Yes. Does this mean that students from Doty will have more transitions so that they can access the same level of educational opportunities, music opportunities, art opportunities as other students do? Yes, and on the document I enclosed I cut and pasted in the Vermont Principals Association and Vermont School Board Association definition of equity. So in the short term, Worcester students will have more transitions. This is the both and. As we're moving, it's one of the trade-offs, I'm not gonna lie, it is a trade-off. Worcester students get more than one transition for the short term in order to maintain Doty as a school for our youngest learners. That's the trade-off. The difference in the cost, Turtle Island, the 10 hours a week of pre-K is the universal pre-K, which is fine. In terms of the cost of aftercare, so the cost of childcare beyond the guaranteed 10 hours a week, is Turtle Island is, I don't know how you say it, eligible for subsidies or what the term is. Yeah, so students who attend Community Connections can apply for child care subsidies, and we facilitate that. And Turtle Island also facilitates applications for child care subsidies. There was a question asked about community school opportunities. Partnering with an early child care center is part of being a community school. That is being a community school.
I can answer. Yeah, so the question about who makes the decision, the board makes the decision on the lease. The administration would make a decision on configuration of students within schools and their classrooms. And for us, we've got an attorney to help us work out the details of a commercial lease. We've also acquired leases from private school partnerships that are throughout the state. There's a couple of other ones in the state. And so we've looked at their leases as well as models for that. But the board would approve the lease, and that's the decision that would have to be made at the board level. And I know that there has been a question around due diligence regarding the any tenant that we would accept in any school or any situation. We would want to do provide due diligence to make sure that they were going to be a good quality tenant. We've tasked our attorney with reviewing any information between the current lease between Turtle Island and their landlord to identify any areas the district may need to address as well. So our attorney is engaging in that process of vetting them, making sure that they have the necessary funding structures in place to be able to meet what our concerns would be. Would they be a good tenant? And so our attorney is doing that. And then there was another big question around if more than 50% of the building is rented out, the district would lose property tax exemption. So it's not more than 50%, but there's actually a formula that we would have to look at. From our attorney, they've said that we would have to request an exemption from the town of Worcester if there were a need for property tax exemption, and that there's a fairly complicated analysis is what our attorney said. And that would determine whether part of our property used by Turtle Island would qualify for an exemption, but there's a really good argument that it should be. Our attorney also advised us that if indeed there was a need to pay some amount of property tax, that would be built into the lease itself, that we would not shoulder that burden. But he's also pretty satisfied that because Turtle Island is a nonprofit and child care provider, that this would not be a hard process to go through. And then there was a question around our insurance costs. So our insurance doesn't change at all, and in fact, Turtle Island has to maintain a level of insurance to be able to accept students from our district. So there are already 9 students that attend pre-K in Turtle Island. And for them to be able to accept our students, they have to have a level of insurance that meets the needs of our district. And in fact, this is a decision made by all the superintendents in this region and our insurance companies about what level of insurance all pre-K providers would have to be able to get students on the Act 166 funds. So we're very, they've already got the level of insurance that they would need in this building as well. And then there was, as many of you have seen in the news, Turtle Island did secure a space at the Farmers Elk Club. And really, how does this affect us? So this was Turtle Island. If you wanted to speak to how many kids Phoebe could, our understanding is that 26 children could be in that space, but there's still a need for additional space for them. And so, well, I guess we have questions about that. We can get to those unless there's something you want to add.
No, that's
okay. And just the number of families that are served by Turtle Island under Act 166. This does not count the number of families who have early child care. These are just the families who have students attending pre-K with Turtle Island, and there are 9 students from our district that are there right now. Out of the, and I'm sorry, Phoebe, what's the total number you have right now? So 45 pre-K students, 9 of them are from our district families as well. So that's kind of the big questions that came up, and I know that there are a lot more, but those were the big questions that came up at our last meeting, and we've seen in some of the emails from us. But
right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go back and I'll take notes while people are talking. What I am going to do and what I'm going to ask is I want to make sure that every voice has the opportunity to be heard. So what I'm going to ask is that people, if you have multiple questions, that I ask that everybody asks one question, and then we're just going to keep going like that. Because I want to make sure that everybody who has a question or a comment to make has the opportunity to ask that question or make that comment. We're going to do this in rounds. Does that make sense to people?
All right, so if you are online and want to make a comment or ask a question, we would just ask that you raise your hand there, and we'll be looking for people to raise their hands here. Oh.
Somebody has a microphone.
Thanks. Hello, I'm Chani Waterhouse from Worcester. I just wanted to say that there are a couple amazing Doty alums providing babysitting in the library, and if anyone would like to leave a donation in this vase on your way out, please do. Thanks.
Are you introducing the kids? Oh, sorry. Okay, we have a couple of students who would really like to make a statement.
Okay.
You can come on up. And would you like to introduce yourselves and your grade?
I'm Rosie, and I'm in 4th grade. I'm Wilder, and I'm in 3rd grade. I'm Thatcher, and I'm in 4th grade. Some students are worried that decisions about Turtle Island have been made without listening to what the kids are worried about. We decided to interview students and collect their stories and things they were worried about. Here are some of the things they said. Some students are afraid that after the 2-year lease, more grades are going to get pulled out of Doty and eventually Turtle Island might take over Doty. Some students are happy about change, but annoyed about having to change classrooms. Some students don't want to lose 5-6 and are worried about only having 5 grades in the school. Some students are worried about changing classrooms or schools. Some students feel like if Turtle Island moved in, it could collapse the community, not just for the students in the building, but also for parents. It would be hard for families to drive to different schools if they had a strict schedule. We hope you take this to heart and protect Worcester and our school community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I saw, Lila, did you have your hand up? Yeah, I mean.
Working? Yeah, okay. Lila Richardson in Worcester. I realize you're saying you don't want multiple questions, but I think it would be entirely appropriate and helpful if Stephen could give a description of the lease parameters and timing without having to go question by question. And it's like pulling teeth, frankly. Okay, so that's my question. Could Stephen do this? Thank you.
Yeah, so the lease, so there's 2 documents that we've been talking about. One of them is the lease, which would just identify the space, and it would also identify the use of the building itself. So who is responsible for what in terms of maintenance, in terms of utilities, in terms of custodial, all of those kinds of things. So the details of what it means to lease a space, who's responsible for what, and making very clear between the 2 entities who's responsible for what items. Now, our attorneys are working that out. It's certainly what we've looked at is the 5 classrooms and the 3-6 wing as the possible lease space for them. And right now, our attorneys are actually just writing that up as to what would it look like, what are the different things. We've been sending them, here's the other lease documents that we've seen. I will tell you that looking at what other school systems have done, a couple of the leases are extremely basic. They just pretty much say, here's the cost and here's where you're going to be. And one of the other ones is a little more detailed. We would be looking for a detailed document so that it was very clear the responsibilities of each party and what to do should there be any kind of questions or needs for updating that lease. We would be looking at a 2-year lease to start with, and so that's the length of time that we'd be looking for a first lease with the ability to renew that lease. I don't want to speak for Turtle Island and all of this, but one of the things that I found to be encouraging is that they were not looking to just, when we first started talking, they weren't looking to be here for just a year or 2. They were looking at how do we expand our program so that we can have multiple locations. And so I know that when they've talked about, you've seen the work at the Elks Club, they've said that they want to build a larger facility there. And so I can't answer for what they're looking at in their long-term growth, but what I did hear from them is that they want to have long-term growth so that they can serve more students. Because from what I understand, they have a pretty healthy waiting list as well. I would say that's the first document, the lease itself, which is really the physical and utilities, all those kinds of things. The other one is a memorandum of understanding. And what that can do is cover all of the other questions that we might have between each other about the use of some of the playground space, the summer needs for them, how we would integrate other work. There are things like food service would be something that would probably be covered under a memorandum of understanding as opposed to a lease because it's just different contracts that are there. But we do know from the state that, that they would be eligible for the reimbursements for meals through their program as well. And so we could expand our meal offerings to be able to include them as well and be able to get reimbursed from the state and the federal government. And in fact, the state actually sent us an email unsolicited that could happen. So somebody was paying attention to what was going on. So there's some expansions there, but that's what a memorandum of understanding would do, would be covering some of those things that a lease might not cover. It could include things like, is there shared library time? Is there shared gym space? How do we go about doing that? How do they ask for that space to be used? And then what's the process by which it can be approved? And I saw in a lease that if they wanted to use other spaces in the building, they had to submit a building use form in one district. We can outline those things in our documents as well, just so it's clear when and where they could use space and when and where we would have joint space and joint time together. So I don't know because of the latest piece for them, because they've been granted an extension from my understanding, but I think we'd be looking at September 1st would be, and I would ask Phoebe on this one.
Yeah, we have a tentative agreement for an extension. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but we would work with Stephen and Gillian to make sure that whatever the timing was would work for both of us. We have a similar first day as the school district, so our first day is August 27th, I believe, in this fall. So ideally, in order for us to move out of our existing location and into our new locations, we would want to start moving items at the beginning of August, but we wouldn't start settling in until the 16th, but we would obviously work with the school district to make sure that it worked for both parties.
Did that get at the elements that you were asking about? Was there anything else?
You know, frankly, you say a memorandum of understanding is being drafted, as I understand it, but you can't say what the shared spaces would be proposed, or you're not?
Well, no, I said we said the shared space, like we're talking about places like the playground, the gym, the library. We would outline how we would share any of that space, what the process would be for that to be requested by Turtle Island, and then that would be outlined in a memorandum of understanding. And I
don't know if this gets added, but like say, for example, so the lease just covers the structure, but Lauren brought up a good point about library use. And so those are the things that would be outlined in a memorandum of understanding would be are Turtle Island students allowed to check out books from the library? If they are, what is the reimbursement? What is the cost? What does the reimbursement look like for that? What are expectations around, it's even little things like, I'll use the library because that's the most concrete example. Turtle Island is accessing the library and tears a book. Turtle Island would be responsible for replacing the book. Those are the kinds of things that would be outlined in a memorandum of understanding. Does that help?
Yeah, I understand that's the kind of thing, but it seems like you must have
So I think what we're moving towards, yes, we're trying to get a lease together and the memorandum together as soon as possible, but we're also wanting to make sure that we do the full due diligence on it. Our attorneys are working on it right now. We've been in contact with them every other day just to see where we're at. And so they're having those conversations. They're making sure that this is a document that we can then present to the school board. And I would say that if it's not ready, we're not going to rush that piece of it. What we need to do we just need to have it in place sooner than later. And I don't know how else to answer is other than people are working as fast as they can to put it together. And so as soon as we have it available, we're going to make it public for the board and the public to see.
You mentioned, you mentioned utilities. How about water and electricity? How does that work?
I think I'm concerned about water use being divided. It's a business, and the school gets a rate a little bit better, I think. And then how about power? You know, how do you divide that off? Because I used to be on the Prudential Committee in the water system, and if you have 2 tenants, you have to have 2 meters, and who supports the cost of that?
So I think overall, we know what our utilities costs are on a yearly basis for the building, and so we're looking at what percentage of that utilities would go to that space, is what we've been looking at. In terms of our water usage and all of that, I don't know that we have to have 2 meters for that, but we can certainly, I mean, we'll look into that piece, but I haven't been told that by anyone at this point in time. We just want to make sure that whatever lease amount that we're asking for covers those costs for us. Some questions in the back, yeah. Heather?
Here you go. Thank you. So with the 5th and 6th leaving, per se, if they do leave, has the school board, select board, had time to actually assess what the financial ramifications will be and how that will affect Doty and the town in the future?
So if I understand the question correctly, like what does it mean for the building itself or for the amount of money that comes to the school?
Sorry. With 5th and 6th and funding,
right?
6th and 6th graders, 5th, 6th, going to a different school, with those funds that generally come in from the state for this school, how will that affect Doty and the town, what we're going to pay for taxes, like a tax burden?
So your tax burden is determined by the district as a whole. So it would not, whatever the district changes are, it's the changes that would occur with Worcester. So Worcester wouldn't have there wouldn't be a special tax against Worcester. There wouldn't be any tax break for Worcester either, because it's one district. For the tax rate. In terms of the funds, our budgeting process has been per pupil so that we meet the needs of the pupils that are in each of the buildings. So yes, there would be fewer dollars that come in overall because those students wouldn't be here. However, you also would need the services for those students either. So that is a balance between those two things. The money that comes in for the kids are used for the services for those kids. And so we would still have the funds we would still be allocating the funds necessary to keep Doty a vibrant school for the kids who are here. And we would also be charging a lease to Turtle Island that would help cover some of the additional cost of the building itself. One of the things that we saw in this process is that, and I would go back to our configuration conversations that we had previously, in closing the building, that looked like the town having to take it over and having to keep this building up if they chose to, just by the taxpayers of Worcester. If we keep this building open as a school, it is the responsibility of all the taxpayers of the district. And so it's not the individual town that's responsible for it. And so we would be allocating the funds necessary to make sure that this school stayed vibrant. I know that because I've been the face of a lot of the conversations, I heard from the community, I don't want to close Doty. I hear it, right? And that's not my intention. That's not the intention of our communities. That wasn't the intention of our board. Once we came to a vote, it was clear that we were not going to do that. This is a way for us to talk about how do we keep Doty as an early learning center. Yes, it doesn't get all of the students all the way through 6th grade, but we have a school that in, the numbers for this school, and I know it's hard sometimes to believe them, but in 4 years, we'll only have 51 students kindergarten through 6th grade in Worcester. And you saw our pre-K numbers are anywhere from 3 to 5 kids for the next several years. Those aren't viable. Those aren't enough kids for us to have a viable program. Partnering with Turtle Island, we could have a pre-K program here for our Worcester kids to be a part of that would also serve other kids as well. But it would provide us with that, and we would be able to have keep our kids here through 4th grade in the proposal that we have right now.
I think just to also add about budgeting and finances, the budget is divided up into several different pieces. And so the part of the budget that is really the most variable is the per pupil allotment, for lack of a better term, because that is based on the number of students, and so that money goes to where the students are. And that money is targeted specifically for services for students. A whole separate piece of the budget is the operations piece. So that is not at all tied, that is based on the square footage and the needs of the building, and it's not tied to the number of students who are in the building. So that is, that's one, I think, one clarification to be really clear on. Oh.
Well, I think
Actually, I'm going to stop calling on people. I'll do it.
When I first heard about this, I thought, wow, we are really out of the way coming to Worcester from where Turtle Island is. And I'm making assumptions, but I would think that most of the families who use Turtle Island would be professional couples who work in the greater Montpelier area or jump on the interstate and go to Burlington. And somehow, if my assumption is right, this is another, just to go back to Montpelier, it's another 60 minutes or 80 minutes in your day. It doesn't seem very green, and I want to feel positive and think about sustainability, but I keep thinking, wow, in 2 years, Turtle Island will find somewhere that is a better hub and a better central location for most of the people they serve, and then what happens in 2 years?
so. I'm going to let Phoebe take this one.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, we serve not just Montpelier families. We, as you know, we have 9 students from the Washington Central School District for pre-K, and then we have many others who are younger than that. Yes, Doty is out of the way. It is definitely an additional commute for people. So in terms of the green part, I can agree with you. However, in terms of the long term, one of the things that we're so excited about with this partnership is that it really is an exciting opportunity to provide care for birth through 5 in a public school setting, where then the children would continue on from kindergarten through whatever grade the elementary school serves, and that families could then drop their children off, all of their children in one location. I'm really excited about this opportunity for all the schools in the district as a future model. Unfortunately, cars are how we get around, and I can't, I'm not one person, as one person, I can't change how we commute. I try to bike when I can, but that's my own thing. But again, when we put in our proposal to the city about the potential for a new build, it was really to let the city know that they need to keep childcare at the forefront of their planning for that location. It doesn't have to be a Turtle Island building. It could be another center or a new center. It's just that we really want and need more childcare in this area. We have, I think someone mentioned about 300 children on our wait list, and it's ridiculous. We cannot, a lot of those children age out before they have an opportunity to attend, and it's not fair to those families who are just scrambling to try to find childcare. So people are willing to drive this far to get childcare, and we're just excited for this opportunity to create a model, is what I'm saying. And we're excited that if this works out, we would love to stay longer. It's not a 2-year and done deal, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think one of the, and I will say that this is certainly me trying to think about the best possible outcome. And I can't predict exactly what that would be, but if there were childcare that were located here for families, this makes Worcester a place where families would want to move. And I think that this is a model that we could have throughout our district. I don't think I can make it all happen for next year, but I can, with a partnership with an organization that already knows how to do this, begin this process. And so, I mean, I think that if we can make our communities places where families can go and get that child care, I think we run a better chance of having child care stay in our area as well. And so, I mean, that's a big hope for us. I know there was a question over here, and then I'll come back to you, and then we have one online as well.
Okay, hi, Naomi Heindel from Worcester, and my son is a first grader. Absolutely agree with the idea that childcare here will help people want to move here, and we want that. That's great. And I also I really appreciate the idea of the attractiveness of bringing your kids to one place and dropping them off at one place. I think it's hard for a lot of folks to hear that who would actually be having their kids now going to two separate places because of this move. So I'm wondering if our school district leadership and Turtle Island leadership would consider a lease that would allow the 5th and 6th graders to stay here. I'm wondering right now, are we at a yes or no spot here with the lease as it's been described? Or could we say one of, I think our highest priorities maybe is to keep our 5th and 6th graders here. Could we amend what you're proposing, especially given the added time that Turtle Island now has with their extension, and keep 5th and 6th graders here and maybe make this work a little better for all of us?
Okay. We'll come back to you. Let's say we're going to hear, because I saw the kit. Eleanor, go ahead.
Adding on to her, is there a way that we could have 5, 6 join the rest of 3, 4 in the younger wing, or stay over here? And in any way, is there any extra space that we could fit 5, 6 into the this wing of the school, or stay here?
So I did go over and look at the Historical Society and Town Hall. I honestly did not go over and look at Town Hall because the upstairs of Town Hall is not accessible, and so it doesn't meet accessibility requirements. the Historical Society is not up to code for an educational setting and require extensive work to meet code. In terms of looking at how would we think about space here, I honestly don't know and would have to think about it because I don't want to just give an answer to give an answer. I'd like to give a thoughtful response to that. I think that what would remain a question and a concern is about opportunities for sixth graders next year.
I've got an online, and then I'll come back out. So Becca, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
All right, let's see. Hey, everyone. Becca and I live in Middlesex, and both my kids went to Turtle Island from birth through starting elementary school, but we also did the pre-K at Rumney. So it was an interesting mix of that experience of having them already have been at their elementary school when they then went, which was cool. So I have a couple of clarifying questions. So am I hearing right that it would be birth through pre-K at Doty? And then I'm curious about the lease money. Would that just be money that was available to Doty, or would that revenue be funneled back into the district and then sort of diffused through the district? So I'm curious about that. And then I don't want to speak to whether 5-6 should move. I'm not a Doty parent, so I don't want to speak to that. But I'm very intrigued by the idea of having birth through pre-K in all of our elementary schools, and I'm wondering about, what would it look like to sort of accelerate a conversation about having at least a classroom or something at Rumney or other elementary schools who are interested, and not having it all at potentially all at Doty, and whether sort of where that conversation has landed or what the status of that is.
All right, thanks, Becca. I would just say yes, we're looking at infant through pre-K with Turtle Island here at Doty. I appreciate your other comments. I think one of the things that I hear when I hear Turtle Island speaking, with 300 students on a waiting list, there is absolutely a need for us as a district to see how we can respond to that. And I will say from my own experience, when I was principal at U32, I desperately wanted years ago to have childcare there at U32, and modifying that space to meet the current licensing requirements was cost prohibitive at the time. So I think what we need to do as a district is we need to identify where are the spaces that we can use throughout the district. How do we get support for modifying those, where the state is actually talking about construction funds finally again in the state legislature, which could be helpful for us. And how do we then partner, not just, I don't think it's just with Turtle Island. I think there are other people and other providers that might be good for us to partner with, because Turtle Island is specific for a type of programming that some families may not want, that we may be able to provide in other places. And so you're exactly right. And this is one of, I think, when we talk about what does configuration look like in our district moving forward, I think that we really have to dig deeper into the child care below pre-K, and how do we help support that? Because it's clear that throughout our region, there's not enough options for people, and I think we can attract families, which would only strengthen our schools. And so I do appreciate that support. All right, so we've got a whole bunch of hands up now. Oh, I'm sorry. Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I apologize. Becky, you had the question about the funds. So it is up to the school board to decide how those funds are allocated. And that would be with a recommendation from the administration. Our first goal is to make sure that Doty is viable as a school. So if there are funds that are needed for that, then that should be where they go first. But as Gillian said, we do budget separately for things like operations and transportation and all of that. That's not on the per pupil money that's spent in the school. And so I would just say that if that money is needed for Doty, then yes, we want to put it there. If it's also a way that we can help support community school work throughout our district, I think that that would be another area that we would look to. Can we expand what we're talking about here by using that money? But it is a decision that the board votes on where we budget. That's their responsibility to talk about where we budget our funds and how we allocate. So, yeah. Can we just go across? So Noah, and then we'll come across. There was suddenly a ton of hands.
Noah Weinstein from Worcester. I, as you all know, have often a lot to say, so I'll probably do a couple of rounds here. But I first wanted to start by reading an email that I received just today from, just a portion of the email from Becca Kennedy Gentile, who is the treasurer at Turtle Island. And I just want to read a portion of it to sort of put context to this conversation. As far as the broader conversation goes, we really want to be mindful of the needs and feelings of the Worcester community. Please don't hesitate to let us know what would be most supportive. I've been a bit surprised and saddened by some of the more negative reactions we've received, including one particularly harsh email. While I understand that there are still details to work out, we've seen this as a potential win-win from the beginning. We're not trying to take over the school or push Doty students out. We truly want this to be a collaborative process. When this opportunity came up, we were excited about the potential for both communities, and we still are. But we also don't want to force something that isn't wanted. I believe Turtle Island can bring a lot of value, but if the Worcester community really doesn't want us here, I personally would want to reevaluate, and I think the board would too. And so I just want to mention that we have a community letter that is still in circulation that the board has received and the administration has received. It currently has 146 signatures on it of the Worcester community saying that the way that this current proposal is written is not wanted here. It does not work for us to have the 5-6 move up to Rumney, at least on this timeline. If the entire district decided that it's really good for 5-6ers to all be together, they should all be together on the same timeline. It doesn't work for us to be the guinea pigs here. The other thing that I would say about that is that in terms of, you haven't answered Naomi's question yet, but I think that what would make this a viable proposal, because I would agree, we all want more early childcare. This is not about that. The question is, how do we get more early childcare without jeopardizing the needs of Doty students in Worcester? So right now, the way this current proposal is, for next year would reduce the population of Doty by 25%. And that's 15 children in 5-6 at $17,000 a child that was allocated to Doty based on the current budgeting process. That means that's like $265,000 that leaves Doty. And Flora, I see you shaking your head, but that is Stephen's numbers, right? That is, so it would be a net loss of $200,000 to Doty. And the question is, how does that account for a principal's salary, for a guidance counselor, for a nurse, for special teachers? If we're losing all of that money at Doty, but that means we lose a full-time counselor. It means we lose a lot of stuff. That does not even count the amount of money that it costs to maintain this building, which I have still not received an answer for in terms of what is the current operating costs plus what are the capital expense costs, because all of those would be on Turtle Island, plus not only what would they be officially leased, but what would be the shared spaces that they would also be offered, which could potentially bump it above 50%. There's the question about education fund spending, which hasn't been answered in terms of the money that's being spent here. How do you distinguish between what's being spent on a commercial space versus what not? And I think to the question of, are there other options here that would potentially work for the Worcester community? I think they are, but Worcester has to be part of the conversation. This has been a very top-down approach, and it really reeks of this systemic classism. And it's not, nobody is trying. I believe everybody has positive intention here, but there is this sense that these people can't make decisions for themselves. We need to help them. We need to save them because they are not capable of helping themselves. And that's a real problem. And so are there other options? Absolutely. So you could build a firewall right down the hall here so that 3 rooms would be leased to Turtle Island. And 5 rooms plus the library, plus the office space, plus the fancy security entrance would all continue to be at Doty. So Turtle Island could have 3 spaces. They currently have a need for 20 current students if they have 26 up at the Elks Club. And so of their current students, they need 20 more spaces because everybody else is going to kindergarten. They could easily fit 20 people into 3 rooms. They could have an infant room, they could have a toddler room and a pre-K room, and then they could prioritize anything above those 20 current students would go to Worcester. And then after Worcester, it would go to Washington Central. So there are ways to make this work for Worcester with one firewall. You could do the same at Rumney. You could make one firewall and have 4 classrooms available to Turtle Island, and you could put the rest of the Rumney, just like you were planning on doing for Doty. They would all fit. With the 3 classrooms, we'd still have a math room, we'd still have a music and art room. So it's totally possible, and there are a lot of people in Worcester saying, we don't want it the way this is, and the idea of how this process has been laid out is not a good omen for what the potential relationship between the town of Worcester and Turtle Island would be if this is forced down our throats. We are totally willing to collaborate, but we need to be at the table. Thank you.
So there's a huge misconception floating around this $265,505. Doty, I would not be up here speaking enthusiastically about something that takes $250,000 out of Doty. I would not be speaking enthusiastically about that at all. I would like to be really clear about that. The 26, the Doty, there would be 1 teacher salary would go, technically not even leave the Doty coffers because there's an opening at another school. So technically still, because we have an approved budget, Doty's staffing allocation would remain the same unless a need emerges at another school, if there's an influx of students at another school. So the money would follow the students. We can look and think about how we could keep the 5-6ers here. And then the question that I would, there are 2 things that I want to push back on a little bit. The first thing that I want to push back on is we have 4 6th graders. We're projected to actually now have 10 5th graders. We have somebody moving out of district. That is both good and bad, and there are increased opportunities in larger schools. There are benefits of numbers, so that I think that keeping 5-6 here just to keep 5-6 here is not really weighing all of the risks and benefits. And then what I would also say and call out a little bit is veiled threats are not respectful. That's what I'm just going to call out in this room right now. Veiled threats are not respectful, and we don't do that here.
Can you be clear about what the threat means?
So you are saying that, what I heard you say, Noah, is I heard you say that this will impact Worcester's ability to work with Turtle Island. That's a veiled threat in my book, and I don't tolerate that. And I understand that, but what I want to say is, anytime there's a change, it is difficult. And that we have to look at things, and we are constantly welcoming new people into our community. Every time we open a new business, we are welcoming new people into our community, and we need to be respectful to all of them and not say, we don't like the way you moved in. You can target that anger at us, but I really don't want to hear it going towards people who are trying to serve children.
I totally appreciate it, and that's not what we're doing. Hold on for a second.
Sir, I'm going to give you the mic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I appreciate the question about a veiled threat. That is absolutely not my intention, and I apologize if that's how it comes across. What I'm saying is that I think that the relationship would be much more positive if you include the Worcester community in this process as opposed to telling them what is happening and they just need to deal.
Okay. So we do have a whole lot more questions that people have had their hand up, so yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so very related to that, what Noah was saying, when we did this, a whole, deja vu, we were here, whatever, over at the Callis Elementary School, and what I heard there loud and clear was, hey, we have lots of ideas. Please invite us to the table. We have lots of ideas. Please invite us to the table. Please don't come back with this idea that feels like it's already decided and we're here and now we're having to, everyone's feeling under threat, which is maybe partly what we're hearing from people's voices. And it feels like we're doing the exact same thing with an even tighter timeline. And I think I understand that there are, school district timelines that need to be considered and that, Turtle Island has their own timelines. But it just feels like we're making the same mistakes over and over again, and that there are, we saw on the slides that there are these open questions. So will we move 5th and 6th to middle school? Will it be 6th in middle school? So now we're going to move our 5th and 6th over to another school, and then maybe that changes again, and we could have found out what our middle school plan was and then proceed with that. There are a lot of questions we have, like what a week, how much time did we have until we're supposed to be making this decision?
So we're hoping to get the lease available by next week so that people can review it. But the board could make the decision later if necessary.
I feel like there is so much uncertainty, again, before the fate of our children, again, is going to be decided by someone other than us. And my kid who's on...
It always is, you idiot.
Well,
I'm sorry, what was that? All right, sounds great. My son who's on his 5th or 6th school transition is going to be making yet another one, and then yet another one to middle school. Next year, and we heard about across the street, just walking across the street to see that there might be some code changes that would need to be necessary in order to make the Historical Society viable. How much cost would that be? How much cost would that be to reconfigure the school to make this work for the rest of our children here? We need to know the answers to those questions to make these decisions, and we have a week. So I would agree. I think what I'm hearing is not categorical pushback on this plan. I don't feel categorical pushback on this plan. I feel like we need specific information, which is not going to happen by next week. I don't see how that can happen by next week. I don't know we're going to find an art room and a music room. Where? I'd like to see what that looks like. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Humke, Worcester resident. So we moved in like 22, 23 years ago. I was just looking at Kale's flag. Kale's 21 now, and he's up at UVM. His class was 9 strong back in 2016, and 9 times 7 grades is 63 students. I always thought Doty was around 60 students, something like that. And you say 51 now. 51 divided by 7 grades is about 7. Instead of 9, 7. And I get the trend, but for anybody who has ever put money in the stock market, it's a long-term thing, right? It's 22 years we've been here. Some people, Kathy's been here a long time. A lot of people have been in Worcester a long time. A lot of people have intentions to be in Worcester a long time. Some people who are here tonight have worked on the school building. They've taken care of the school building. They've worked on capital expenditure budgets for the school building. They've served. It's our school. It feels like our school. It's not feeling like our school recently. And I thought we all came together to say, this is our school. We want to make decisions for our school, and I thought we won. And now I feel like we lost because we're right back into this like weird zone of lack of control. It feels a little weird, like partnering private with public. That just feels weird. I'll just say that. You know, our taxes here in Worcester aren't cheap. I've always paid them. I know that there's an educational component to it. They haven't, I don't remember them like skyrocketing. They've always been bad, and they're still bad. So you know, why do I pay them? Because I believe in this school. I believe in the educational opportunities in this school. Both my kids are doing very well right now. I believe in the education of Doty. I don't think going down to 7 per grade is a terrible thing. You know, maybe in 5 years or 10 years, it'll go back up to 9 or 10 or 11, and we'll come out of this. This is a long-term game. I'm seeing a lot of quick decisions to be on the cutting edge and things like that. I don't know that that's true. I just don't see the numbers yet. I'm not convinced, and I don't think we should make a quick decision on something that a lot of people have very strong feelings about. You don't make decisions quickly when they have some, you know, such huge, consequences for the kids. I would love to see the 5, 6 stay in this school, and I do support, pre-K. Carly, my wife, she works at Northfield Elementary. They have a pre-K program. Why don't we have a pre-K program? We don't have enough kids. We've got 9 in the district. Do any of our 5 schools have a pre-K program?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So 9 of our pre-K in the district.
Not in the whole district go to Turtle Island, but we have two sessions of pre-K at East Montpelier, 2 sessions at Berlin. We have 1 at Calais and 1 at Rumney. Right now, we know that there are 2 pre-K students in Worcester for next year. So it's hard to, it's not enough. And so we're trying to figure out ways to do it. Well, if we have 4, we have no indication of who they are. But 4 is still not enough kids to run a program. Okay. There's questions all across the back here as well. So I know people have had their hands up.
Thank you. Hello. I'm vehemently opposed to this, irrespective of any logistical reason, but on principle alone. The ascendant, aspirationally fascist regime is brazenly eviscerating public education across the country. This is a time-tested method of keeping the populace stupid so they'll grow up to believe whatever they're told and to have no ambition in life other than to be the worker drone of some billionaire. And by putting the needs of private interests over that of public education, we're complying with their initiative. And it will be our own damnation. This is just one more brick in the Babylon that we're building for our grandchildren. And no one cares because we won't be there to see it fall. But as sure as every empire falls, it will. And the more of this crap that we do, the sooner and the harder it will fall. And the best way we can prepare our descendants for the fallout thereof is to build strong and resilient local community. And the best tool we have to do that is free and equitable public education.
Hi, I'm Megan. My 2 boys went to Turtle Island for several years, and they both graduated from Doty. And so I feel like, at first I was sort of feeling unsure and thinking this probably wouldn't work well. Especially for the Doty students. And by the way, I work here and I work in the district. So I have a lot invested in all of this, and I feel that the current plan does seem to take away some things from Doty kids. And I feel like, I know there was a time constraint, so I know that it was rushed, but it was because this was an opportunity and we had to move, or the board and everybody had to move on it. So I get the rush, but I feel I can hear people's worries for their children to be moved. I get that having bigger classes might be good, might not be good for some, but I think if we could find a way to keep the 5-6 here, at least for this year, and then work a plan, a slower plan for people to have some more input into it. I'm wondering if there is any way that we could put a fire door or some kind of door through the library into that art and music room and have one more classroom and keep the 5-6 here. That might help slow this down, and parents and students would have time to figure things out a little more. So I am so excited to have a child care in our community. I think it's really awesome and it's a really good opportunity, and I don't want to lose that, but I also want to make sure that the Doty students are okay. There's a lot of fear right now. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. And no, yeah, go. She's had her hand up for a while. And Caitlin, I'll come back up. Yeah. It should be green.
Okay, so I'm Rena. I'm from Worcester.
The people online can't hear you.
Yep.
Here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm from Worcester, and I want to start with saying that I'm very disappointed coming here today because I did not go to Turtle Island, but I had a lot of friends and family that did, and I also have friends and family who have worked there, and it's a program that I feel very passionate about. I like nature-based care, and it means a lot to me, especially in early education. So I came here a little bit excited at the possibility of maybe coming up with a plan that would work for everyone, or that early childhood education could be integrated into Worcester. And I agree that there are some benefits, primarily networking almost, where we would be bringing early child's parents to Worcester, and they might want to stay in some capacity. But the presentation that we got today from the school board and the principal, I found just very lackluster. I don't think it had the details that we wanted to see. And I agree that the timeline is completely unreasonable. But more than anything, my main concern that I want to bring up is the fact that a student here at Doty asked, is there any way that you can move around the floor plan so that we could change, and you didn't even have an answer to it, which shows me that it wasn't something that you had even considered. And although I'm not, a teacher here and I don't know all the logistics or that kind of thing, that seems to me to be the obvious first try to come up with a plan, like other folks have said, to be able to have Turtle Island here and to keep all of our students here, which again is something we've been fighting for all year.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Mike. I'm from Worcester. I love the idea of dropping off a whole family of kids here at the beginning of the day. But I just wonder if that's realistic for Worcester families. Turtle Island isn't cheap, and it's got a 300-person waiting list, and those people live in Montpelier for the most part. So I'm wondering, would Turtle Island give Worcester families a break on tuition? And would you put them at the start of that 300-person waiting list?
So we've certainly asked them about pre-K to make sure that pre-K so that we had a viable pre-K program here. I think that that would have to be part of their negotiations with them as to whether or not there was anything. And I can't speak, I mean, that's a negotiation. I don't know what Turtle Island would be willing to accept for that. So Caitlin, yeah.
Hi. Caitlin Hawansky. I've written mine down because otherwise my anxiety gets me very jumbled. This proposal does not center student well-being. It deepens inequities, disrupts families, and was rolled out with no community input. That's not how public education should work. When a decision of this magnitude is made behind closed doors, it erodes trust, and it tells students and families in some parts of the district that their voices matter less. Gillian said at the start here, and forgive me if it's not exactly right, you don't get robust discussions when you only have you said 4, but voices in the room. You need more voices to push the thinking. And let's be very clear about what's happening here. This proposal removes students receiving a free public education to make space for a private tuition-based program. That's a fundamental reversal of what public education is supposed to stand for. We are prioritizing families who can pay over families who rely on the public school system, and doing so in a school that has already weathered years of uncertainty and underinvestment. That's not equity, that's not what we value, and it's especially troubling when easily implementable alternatives are sitting on the table. I would welcome Turtle Island into our building and into our community. I have been on the wait list for years. I'm not opposed to sharing this space. I'm opposed to doing so in a way that harms our students. We can work together to create a solution that gives Turtle Island access to 3 classrooms at Doty without displacing any of our own students or compromising equity. I've also sent a letter to the school board and the administration stating that I also believe there are at least 4 classrooms at Rumney that could be used either instead of or in addition to the space at Doty. The administration has said that Rumney wasn't considered due to enrollment, but the data, including the district's own projections, does not support that claim. Today, the superintendent released a memo. In this memo, he states, according to the NEES DEC projections, overall enrollment at Doty is expected to continue declining over the next several years. But according to information from the April 24th, 2024 board packet between fiscal year 22 and 26, Doty's enrollment is projected to decline by only 6%. East Montpelier will see a 29% decline, Romney a 22% decline. If we're serious about equity and sustainability, then all district facilities should be equally considered. It's really time to ask hard questions about why some communities are shielded from tough decisions and financial realities, while others are expected to bear the burden. That pattern of buffering wealthier towns while destabilizing smaller ones from our financial and enrollment realities reflects a deeper systemic issue, and it must be addressed head on. If any Turtle Island families are here or listening online tonight, please know we do not see you as adversaries. We just spent the last year, ending only months ago, fighting for our school's very right to exist. To have our board and administration turn around and nearly immediately offer us up again is beyond belief. I believe we can all do better, and we want to work with you to make this a win for everyone involved. Despite repeated assurances, this proposal feels like the first step in a quiet dismantling of our school, the beginning of a slow fade out, not a genuine investment in our future. And if the rationale is to position ourselves for possible state education reforms, it's premature at best. Those reforms are not finalized, they're not defined, we don't know what they're going to be. To act now based on speculation is not strategic, it's reckless. Worcester has been clear. We are willing, even eager, to explore a true community school model. We want to build something lasting and inclusive, but that cannot happen if we are continually left out of decisions. Collaboration, not secrecy, is a path forward. We ask you to slow down, reconsider, work with us, not around us. There is still time to make a much better choice.
Thank you, Caitlin. There were a couple more people in the back that had. Yeah.
Hi, Deborah Bloom, and I have 2 children here at Doty. My son Henry is in the 4th grade, so will be affected by the 5th grade moving to Rumney, and my other son Leo is in 1st, so he'll be in 2nd grade next year. I'm also the newly appointed Worcester representative on the configuration committee, so I've only been to one of those meetings, but you all might see me in that space later. So I feel a little bit like I have the 2 different, the devil and the angel sitting on my shoulders. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Caitlin just said. And I also understand and see what is happening on a state level with our education system, because yet another hat that I wear is that I work for the Agency of Education, and nothing I say in this space is as a representative of that agency, but I do pay a lot of attention to what's happening at the legislature. I do pay a lot of attention to things like those enrollment numbers. I do go to webinars about birth rates across the country, about declining enrollments all over the country. I do see that happening. And I did experience and sat here with everybody in this room last year fighting for this school. And I truly believe that this school needs to remain open and viable in Worcester. It is an incredibly important part of this community. Do I think this is an ideal situation? Far from it. Again, I believe everything that Caitlin just said. I believe that there are inequities in how this process happened. I believe that this actually creates greater distrust between this community and a board after what happened last year, which is incredibly unfortunate. However, I also believe that this is an opportunity for us as a community to try something and maybe make something really great happen. And I think we should try it. I really do. And if not my kid going to 5th grade at Rumney next year, somebody else's kid going to 5th grade at Rumney in 2 years. And do I want it to be my kid? He doesn't want it to be him. That's not what he wants. Do I want this school to be here for Leo through 4th grade? Absolutely. Do I fear that it might not be? Yeah, I do. So no, nothing about this is ideal. Do I want us to be, as a community, more involved in the MOU? Yes, we should be. We should be at the table in that development process. We should have commitment from the administration that we are there in writing that MOU. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate you all and all of what you are saying.
I just I'll go.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Very polite. I'll take it. I'm Andrew. I have 2 kids here at Doty. This whole thing, I've got so many thoughts. I'll try to keep it short, but I love the idea. I love the idea of bringing in Turtle Island. I love the idea that, all right, we're combining private sector and public school. That's weird, but weird's okay. What I don't love is that we're going to stitch on an arm here and cut off an arm here. It reeks of a scarcity mindset. And I think that our leaders pushing this forward need to be coming from not a place of running scared and responding to scarcity, but if we want to be a pilot program, if we want to hold our heads high and say, hey, listen, the enrollment numbers are down everywhere. People aren't having enough babies. People aren't across the state, across the country, and we want to be a leader, then let's act like a leader. And let's say, all right, state, right? We're going to do this weird thing. come and support us. We don't need to be cutting off a couple of grades so we can add early childhood education. I did not like the answer I heard when the question was asked, what happens with that $65,000 a year lease money? Oh, it goes to the school board's going to decide who needs it the most. And if Doty needs it, then they'll get some of it. If Doty needs it, we're cutting off 2 grades. Of course, Doty needs it. What can you do with $65,000? I'm a builder. I can build a lot of walls for $65,000, okay? So if we have a new program and new income that should all go to Doty because it's Doty's space, then use that money to facilitate 5th and 6th grade. Add an addition. And then go to the state. Who's at that top level? Because they're not here. I don't see anyone at the top level, but I don't know who that is. How do we appeal to them to say, you want this, then support it? There is money, right, being doled out. Like, sorry, I'm a layman. I don't know educational politics. It's just the simple math is we want to add this cool conglomeration private sector program, and along with that comes money. That money should be used for Doty, and it should save the 5th and 6th grade. I don't see why we're adding an arm and cutting off another. That's all.
Thank you.
Ursula in front of you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, and then we'll be right over here.
Hello. My name is Christy Pollard. I have 3 children at Doty. I have 2 4th graders who are potentially going to Rumney next year, and a 2nd grader who will be in 3rd grade at Doty. I also was the preschool teacher at Doty for 3 years before that position was cut. So to answer your question, Ryan, there was a preschool program at Doty, and the position was cut last year due to lack of children. And I think we need to keep that in mind, that this is the reason that a change needs to happen at Doty. Noah pointed out that 5th and 6th grade leaving, 15 students, is 25% of our student body. And while a small school is great and it's adorable and the kids are close and they're close to their teachers, it's not sustainable, and it is not in children's best interest to have such small classes. My children are 2 of 10 5th graders for next year. My children make up 1/5 of the next year's 5th grade class. And I say this, I have all the love in my heart for Doty. I love this school as a parent. I loved this school as a staff member. I have always said there is no school in the world I would send my children to other than Doty Memorial. And when I read Gillian's email with the letter, when the shock wore off, I was actually pretty excited. And I think I'm in the minority of 5th and 6th grade parents, because my children are gonna have a broader realm of friends next year and a broader group to pull from with different backgrounds and different experiences and new friends that they can make. And their friends now are great, and they've been together since preschool and since kindergarten, but there's only so much that you can get from 10 other students, and you can get more from 20 students. And I know people are saying the class size is going to be huge. 20, 21, 22 is actually the ideal class size for elementary school. You need the mix of students that comes with 20 kids, more than the mix that comes with 4 or 5. And 4 kids in a 6th grade class is not, it's not ideal. It's not in their best interest. Is this our best option? Maybe, maybe not. But at the least, it gives us a 2-year Band-Aid to figure out what we're gonna do next. But this move is not bad. Our children are going to be okay. They have a fabulous staff at Doty. I could not pick better people to teach my children and love my children than the staff here at Doty, and they are gonna wrap them in so much love when they send them to Rumney, and they have a great staff at Rumney waiting to accept them. They are going to be okay. And Turtle Island moving in here with my 3rd grader, it's going to be okay. And it's scary and it's hard and it's sad, but I really have faith that it's all going to be okay. So I think we need to embrace this change, stick together. We are a fantastic community. We need to show up for our kids and let them know that they are totally safe and they're totally okay, and this move is not going to be as detrimental to them as they think it might be. Thank you.
Up here, please.
You got it.
So many microphones. I'm Kathy. I live in Worcester. And based on my gray hair, you can tell my kids went there a long time ago. But I'm not hearing tonight what this partnership is. I keep hearing partnership, opportunity, partnership. It's a tenant and a landlord we're talking about. I have not heard the benefits of the partnership. So can somebody help me with that, maybe after the meeting? Because right now it's starting to feel like a shotgun wedding, and you know how those turn out.
I know there, yeah.
I would, if it's all right, like to ask just a couple of clarifying questions. It seems that when I first heard about this, it seemed like everything was already decided, and it's not so much coming from you, but up above, it felt like money laundering or something was going on. It came out of the blue, and we were told this is happening, and that's it. It sounds more like everything's still very much up in the air. Most of the lease has not been decided. The lease you are voting on is more of a rough draft.
No, they won't have a rough draft to vote on. When we have the lease completed, that's when we'll put it in front of the board and the community for them to see. But like I said, there are two documents that we're working on with Turtle Island right now, the lease and the memorandum of understanding.
Okay.
Right.
So you need to have the lease done in a week.
That was our goal, but I don't think it's going to be done then. I mean, just to be honest, right?
Yeah.
But we were trying to get to that point. If I don't have it from the attorneys by the next couple of days, then there's no way that it can be, because it has to be warned.
Cool.
Right.
Sorry, I had another one and I can't quite. Turtle Island, one of the things that made it seem very suspicious is we all like Turtle Island, but it is a private entity, and this is a public school. And I feel like I'm still not quite clear on how those two are going to mesh. How much of the public taxes are going to this private entity, or is more of the private entity coming into the public taxes?
Yeah, actually a good question, because some of what Turtle Island's funding is what's called Act 166 funds, which are public funds to private providers for pre-K services. So they already receive public funds for some of their pre-K students, if not all of your pre-K students up to 10 hours, right? Yeah, and so so there's that part. For us, we would be looking at, we would get money for a lease for the space that we have, and that would be from their side of it, so the private to the public side of it. We're not going to pay for their students to attend there, other than the money that would come from our Act 166 students. And so that would go to them, but that already goes to them, right? So they already receive funds for our 9 kids from our district.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
And thank you for doing this clarification, because as I said, it was not a lot of communication and it was very confusing, which is, I think, where a lot of the aggression was coming from, is it felt like someone was trying to pull the wool over our eyes as a community.
Understood.
Thank you.
There's Lee.
I just have one more question. Since we have somebody from Turtle Island here, I'm just wondering, in the agreements that are being drawn up, is there an agreement that the Worcester pre-K or birth to pre-K students go right to the top of that list to be able to go to the Turtle Island pre-K, or the Turtle Island that's here, for free, because we don't have a pre-K, would be our pre-K, right? And then my other question is, would the district have some sort of also, like, not for free, the rest of the district, but would they be able to have some way to get to the top of that list, also to get into the Turtle Island services? I don't know if you can answer any of that right now, but I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people in our district and make this, you know, maybe a more, I don't know, you know, a better fit for them.
We have spoken about the pre-K students, and we would absolutely prioritize the pre-K students because it is, you know, if there were enough pre-K students to merit hiring a teacher for Doty, and we were taking up valuable classroom space, that is something that you wouldn't be able to access because we were here, and so we would absolutely enroll those students. They would absolutely get the 10 hours free. No school district child gets beyond the 10 hours free. Then they pay CC, right? So we have our own rates that aren't that drastically different from CC, is my understanding. I live in East Montpelier, and my sister, her son went to Turtle Island for his 3-year-old year, and then for 4-year-old pre-K, he went to East Montpelier. And balancing it out, she was like, it's actually the same amount of money that I'm paying. So just to put a little bit of perspective on it, our rates aren't outrageous, especially compared to the other places around the area. It's expensive. It is, I wish we didn't have to charge that as much as we do, but we are a business, and we do, you know, we hire educators and they need to be paid a livable wage. 90% of our budget goes to paying teachers. So just to put a little bit of perspective in there, we will 100% support families to apply for the subsidy, because the subsidy has expanded drastically in the last year, and it's amazing. So if parents aren't familiar with the income guidelines, I highly recommend checking that out, because it's really incredible how many more families can receive subsidy given Act 76, which has been rolling out over the last year. I think there you had another question, but I don't remember what it was.
You know, would the Worcester families be able to chunk the line, for better words,
to be able to get into, you know, childcare? There's a shortage. We're helping Turtle Island by looking at this, but, you know, could that happen, that they could get into the childcare, you know, get to the top of that line to get childcare?
I am not in a position to commit to anything at this moment, because I have to work with my board on decisions like that. And we would have to work with the school district on what the terms are of our lease. We are moving part of our program to Montpelier. We are not guaranteeing Montpelier students as a priority. I know that it's a completely different situation. There are a lot of people that live in Montpelier and many fewer people who live in Worcester. But as soon as we start prioritizing people based on our town, it gets really complicated in terms of, you know, we have people who have been on our wait list for their entire child's life, and then they go to kindergarten and they never made it off the wait list. And so we have to consider all the angles and all the needs. So
I guess the short answer is I can't commit to anything without talking to our leadership.
Is it on? Oh, hi. My name is Lee Garrity. I have, most of you probably know me, but I moved to Worcester in '85, I think, for the school, which is really true. I had started working at U32 a few years before that, and when I needed to move from Woodbury, I was really careful about the towns, looking at the towns and looking at the schools, and Doty was a place that I wanted to come, even back when my daughter and my son were small enough to be coming here. So I'm actually a second generation parent or grandparent, I guess, because I do have kids in the school now. I taught for 30 years at U32 in the middle school. And I know you all love Doty, but I have to say that I don't think anybody in here loves it more than I do. When I retired from U32, I started subbing here, and I still sub at U32 sometimes also. And Doty's an awesome place, and it really is magical. So I don't want to take a lot of time, but I want to tag on to something that Gillian said first, and then Deborah, I don't know if she's still here, was talking about. But I think that it's really important that people understand the benefits of moving the 5-6 to Rumney. There are some real positives that can come from that. I think that having small class sizes for younger kids is really important and amazing, and they really feel the love here. And the older kids feel the love too. But by the time they get into 5th and certainly 6th grade, and there are, I think my granddaughter graduated in a class of 6, and she was the only girl. McKalen was in a class of 12, I think, and you were one of the only girls. 4 girls. And my son, who was actually in the biggest class, I think, at Doty, and I'm looking at Tony and John because their son was in it too. There's like 14 or something like that. It was the biggest class that U32, that the district had across the board. Anyway, there's small numbers, and you can't do the same things with older kids. They don't have the same cohort group in small as they do in large, and that allows teachers so much more flexibility to do varied forms of education with them, to break into groups, well, I don't need to go into it with you, and I'm kind of drawing a blank here, but I just want to make sure that I know how magical Doty is. And would I be sad if the 5-6 moved to Rumney? You know, honestly, I think that kids follow what adults lead for them. And I would be really excited for the opportunity that those classes would have by mixing it up. Do I wish that Rumney would come here? I don't know, because I don't know what Rumney has to offer that we don't. It would raise the cohort group level here, and I think that would be a really awesome thing. So do I think that that could happen? Yeah, but I also know that sometimes you need to strike while the iron's hot, to use a phrase that isn't heard of much anymore. But I think that the district, considering how fast this whole thing has come about, in 2 weeks, they've had 2 meetings here. I think that they really do care about what the Worcester community feels like. I know I'm hearing a lot of opposites, but I think 2 public meetings in 2 weeks is pretty fast, and I sometimes think, or I do think, that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith and hope that, not hope, but put things in place, feel like maybe we could work together and make a collaboration here. I hear what people are saying about, is it Turtle Island, is it Doty? Maybe we can put something special together and move from it. I'm afraid that if we don't do this, Turtle Island's going to find another place to be. They have to be somewhere. And then what's going to happen next year when our numbers are down and they want to close the school? Are we going to go back and have the same argument we had 2 years ago? I don't know. Maybe, or maybe it'll just close. I think that this gives us some opportunity to really move forward in the future in the best interest of the older kids and also keeping our younger kids close to our hearts and here. So anyway,
There's someone online. Oh, thank you, Lee. I'm going to go online to Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry my video is off because my babies are asleep and it's dark, but I just wanted to quickly reiterate a point that I think has come up at least in the background a few times, and Deborah Bloom, I think, made it a little bit more expressly, which is essentially to beseech the board to please include a seat at the table for Worcester as negotiations over specifically the MOU move forward. I think when the Q&A session here initially kicked off with, I believe, Lila Richardson asking about what's in the lease and what's in the MOU, I don't think she was asking for a description of what categories of information are in each. I think she was really looking for what is the content of them, particularly the MOU, because residents have expressed a lot of reasonable questions about the actual nuts and bolts of this that haven't been answered. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And I think that part of the big feelings or the aggression that might be coming through in this process is because people are feeling really frustrated about being left in the dark and feeling like this is very top down and just something that's being handed to them at the end, even though it has a really big impact on them. And Worcester would be giving up quite a lot here. They might be getting a lot, but they're certainly giving up a lot, and it's a little bit unclear on what they would be getting because we don't have these details about the MOU. And you've got a private business that's coming in, revenue that is being lost for Doty, and it's not specifically going to Worcester, right? Like Worcester's not getting tax revenue from this business that's operating here because, as Stephen discussed, it's tax exempt, right? And so we're essentially going to be hosting this business here, which I think sounds like it could be delightful. There's a lot of potentially really great things here, but there should be someone who is advocating directly for Worcester in this process. Right now, it sounds like it's something that's really just sort of between the board or even maybe just a lawyer who I don't know who it is, negotiating directly with Turtle Island and making this decision. The board might not even have a lot of time to look at the details, and then it's kind of just going to be like told to Worcester what's going on. And I've heard a couple people raise, for example, and I'm very interested in knowing, like, are Worcester babies even going to be able to go to this early childcare program? Because how frustrating would this be to like cleave off half of our school, and then because there's a 300-person waiting list, you know, it takes 4 years before anyone can even see a spot there. You know, there's been a lot of other concerns that have been raised too, and they're kind of getting like hand waved over. And I get it that there's still details to work out, but I guess, again, just to underscore, I really hope, and I think it could help smooth this process over and make it more palatable to everyone, that the board considers and finds a way to have there be someone who is speaking directly for Worcester interests, as in like business points in a negotiation, to make sure that a lot of these concerns are addressed, and that, you know, this program that is going to be housed potentially in Worcester and impacts the Worcester community, that like someone has been able to be an advocate for the community and the people here. So that is just my request. Thank you.
I would just reiterate, there are 3 board members that are from Worcester who would be a part of this decision-making process. So we do have Worcester representation on our board because we have equal representation from each town at this time. So Bo, you've had your hand up for a while, and then we'll come across.
So the lease and the legalese is being written up. And I think I remember your schedule said you were going to make this decision at the board meeting in 8 days, right? On the 7th?
That was our goal.
Okay, so it seems to me like if the lease and the memorandum aren't even written up, it doesn't give people very much time to understand it.
Right, we're trying.
So would we expect the date for the vote to be in the future?
I would suspect, yes. But I don't see us meeting that goal right now because we want our board to have time to review and the community to review, most specifically the board.
Can I add something, Stephen? I think to make clear, the board or the chair, because I get some comments. I just got a comment from somebody else. I have not seen the lease. They are working with it. Part of the reason of having this session today here is to hear your concerns and add that to the MOU and understand you do have representation. You gotta trust your 3 Worcester representatives, but also you gotta trust the rest of the board. And I'm sorry, no, that I was, shaking my head because I feel like I spent a lot of time talking to you, responding to your emails, and there were a lot of inconsistent things that you were saying, especially because when we're talking about budgeting, we budget for all our kids. We don't look the resources. We put more resources into Worcester because we believe that every school deserves a principal. Every school deserves to have a good funded multi-layer system of supports. All the schools deserve. So we make all these decisions and provide the funding. Not, you provide the funding with the taxes. We just make sure that it's allocated through the strategic plan. I see you nodding your head, Alan, but it is true. And you and I spend more time in the State House fighting for public education. So it's also not fair to make an assumption that the board is doing this because they don't believe in public education. It's the completely opposite. There is a private-public partnership with a part of education that unfortunately we're not able to yet put just on public education, right? We as a country, we should have 0 to 22. And I can get on a bandwagon on how we should be doing education or how we not be doing education. You can just be sure that every single board member in this board believes in public education, and that's why they're part of this board. So when we partner with Turtle Island, for an example, or in other places, is K2, I forgot, I've talked to so many people and I don't remember their names of the childcares they partner with, is because we believe that if you're taking care of the family and the early childhood, you make a transition to school that is better for all our families. What we're doing as a society is taking care of our children, all their needs, and when they come to school, they're better prepared. That transition will be easier. So it is not to detract from public education that we are even exploring this. Like Jillian said, that fell in our lap. We did some hard things through COVID. The kids adapted pretty well, pretty quickly. The adults had a lot harder time in adapting. And I feel like the opportunities that we would be providing for the kids, I understand the heartache. I understand the heartache of telling them that they have to move, but that's why we're here, to listen to you, to hear your concerns, and put that into the MOU that Stephen is going to be looking at with the lawyer. The board will get to see it, and yes, from listening to you guys, we probably have to move this to the second meeting in May so that the board has time to review it in the first meeting of May. I haven't met with Stephen about this. We spent today mostly making sure that all the questions are answered, all the emails are answered. So we're here truly with our hearts opening, listening to what you're going to say, and not because we want to close Worcester, right? It's the complete opposite. We are trying to figure out a viable way to keep Worcester open. And the resources, if we have something that is coming from the lease, those resources are for all our children, right? This is for all our kids. Michael.
There's a couple, yeah.
Or, yeah, you.
Anybody who hasn't spoken,
Does this work? Yeah. My name's Alan Gilbert. I love the hell out of this school. I was the school board chair back in the 1990s when we were trying to raise a bond to build the four classrooms that were about possibly to share with somebody other than students from Worcester. Our taxes were really high. I had a lot of respect for the people in this town who stuck with the school board and said we have to do it, and we did. And 5 years later, we paid you back because we got Brigham through, and our taxes all of a sudden became much more equal, and we saw how difficult it had been for us to work with our kids because we just didn't have much money in this town to to keep a school going, but we do now, or we have. I think one of the things that I've learned tonight, sitting here, is that we are all, and I mean us, and I also mean the administration and the school board, we're going to be in the same place together in about 6 months when the reconfiguration of school districts in the state begins to take place. And we really have to learn how to deal with each other and have all sides respect each other, no matter whether you are a board supervising over a 5 school district, 6 schools, or you are all of us, for whom I have tremendous respect. I mean, where else could you go in any town in this country to have people who care this much for public education and they come out and they support it? It's unbelievable. And I just hope that in the days, the months, the years ahead, we can do a better job than we've been doing so far in dealing with each other as we go through changes. I hope we can get through this. I think the administration has not been very good at all at selling the product. You know, if you were trying to sell something, they didn't have the plan. And it's not our fault that we're upset about this, because we think we might not be getting something that's really what you're saying it is. And it's because there hasn't been the effort to really explain it. So I just hope we can all pull together and to keep going. And I do think it'd be great to have young kids, to have more kids here. But this school has got to continue to be a school for the children of Worcester. It's really important.
Thank you. And I wanted to also say, I brought up the last time we did this 6 months ago, and I wanted to also bring in that I remember very clearly really feeling for the board and for everyone up there, and I really do believe that all of them want to do the right thing. I really, really do, and it's a really crappy situation to be in. And still, so I want to try to translate what I said earlier to something a little more tangible, which is, again, more time, please. More specifics, please, specifically around the why and how we cannot keep 5 and 6 here, even if there might be real benefits to having 5 and 6 move on. I know that my hyper-social 3rd grader will do fine. Day 2, he's going to have 10 new friends. He's going to be great. There are some real benefits, but I still think, though, that just saying that hypothetically, and the kids are saying, well, we don't want this, and it's too soft and too hypothetical. I would like to see specifics about the different proposals that have been laid out pretty well, I think, for options for ways to keep the 5th and 6th graders here in tangible terms. Like, okay, so it's going to cost this much money to, or some version of that, to modify the code across the street. It's going to cost this much money to adjust classrooms here to accept the Turtle Island folks. Like, more specifics. Otherwise, it feels way too soft. And so I'm not opposed. I totally feel for everyone. I want to keep this school here. I don't know more than you all about the possibility of Doty persisting if we don't do something like this. But I'm not hearing a clear argument for let's push this through next week yet. I want to hear specifics. That's my specific request. Thank you.
So I see 3 hands and then 1 hand. And
So we have from Lauren or Kathleen,
Lauren.
Lauren Chabot.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lauren, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. I have a few questions or things I guess I'd like to share, if that is all right. One is just a clarifying question. the lease is being voted on by the board, correct?
It
Is
would
the
be.
MOU also being voted on, or the lease gets voted on and then later on this MOU gets developed?
We're trying to develop them together just so we have them. The board wouldn't necessarily have to vote on an MOU, but we would want to share. I mean, look, we're not going to keep it secret. The MOU will be out there for everybody to see as well.
And I listened in a little bit on the Turtle Island Town Hall the other night, and they were really excited to share the shared gym space available at Doty, the shared library space available at Doty, and I'm curious if that is included in the square footage in the lease? Because those are really value-added spaces.
Right.
This is, I don't know anything about the Elks Club, but I'm fairly confident there's not a library there, and pretty confident there's not a gym cafeteria space.
Right. So Phoebe can jump in. It isn't as much that we would share the library space, is that Turtle Island would be able to access the library as a field trip.
Okay, well, it was communicated to the Turtle Island families that it was a shared space, both the gym and the library, and that they would take advantage of anything, basically. I mean, I'm not saying take advantage, but that, I think those were the words, like anything that's available that they want to take advantage of. And so I just want to clarify if that square footage that they're sharing is considered in the lease. So it seems like a difference of understanding.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I think.
But it's pretty big.
Well, I think when we talk about the shared space, we're talking about the MOU and what they would do through that, and would there be cost associated with it? Because you made a very good point. Is if you're using a library, you need to have somebody in there to help take care of it. That's if Turtle Island wants to use it, and we need those services. We would need to be charging for that kind of thing.
Well, and I would say you talked about how, the FTE, or it's like all prorated, right? All the funding is prorated. And so if they're adding 50 kids who are using the library, that should add to our FTE equivalent of our library position. I know I've talked about that already.
Yeah.
So we don't need to. And I'm curious also the impact, since if Doty kids 5th and 6th go to Rumney, then we have fewer students in our school next year for our budget. So then our FTEs for all of our guidance counselors, nurse, all of those do go down. They're in the budget this year because this is April. But next year, we're looking at reductions.
Right, so that is, well, now sort of everything's up in the air, but one of the things that's been top of mind for me, so the way the Doty allocation, I guess is the easiest way to put it first, my discretionary spending around students was based on last year's census numbers and this year's census numbers. So last year we had 72, we got a larger allocation. So then next year's money would be necessarily reduced because it would be based on this year's numbers. So 72 versus 62, and then based on what it's 59 for next year projected. So then that would be a lower allocation anyway. So Doty, I would have to be making difficult decisions around full-time counseling, around how am I going to allocate the resources that I have based on it.
So I guess that leads to, I would just like to, I've said this in letters, but I think prioritizing having the 5th and 6th grade here is really important, not only because I feel like they're an important part of our community, but also, they add to our numbers. If we can keep one classroom and keep 15 more kids at Doty, I don't see how that makes us look any worse to the state in terms of viability as being a K-6 school versus a K-4 school, still allowing Turtle Island space here. And I guess my last point is just my opinion, and I hear and I recognize what Lee was saying, and I really respect your thoughts, and they're really valuable, and there are also two sides of everything, right? I moved here over 15 years ago, and when I had kids, I was a real skeptic. I'm going to be honest. I was like, this school will have nothing to offer my children. It is so small. I can't believe I have to send my kids to this school. And here I am. This school has so much to offer, and it's different than a school with 350 kids. And for every child who will benefit from being in a class of 21 fifth graders, there's a kid who won't. And I think that we just need to recognize that there are kids who will benefit from it, and there are kids who really thrive in a smaller classroom, and who thrive on more direct instruction from a teacher, and who will really benefit from being in this type of situation. So I think one is not better than the other. I just think it's really important to remember that for each kid that this might benefit, there are kids who it will be really, really challenging for, and will have like the flip side there. And I think I've been thinking a lot about the class discussions and friend thing a lot, and there's no guarantees, right? I teach at a middle school that we have 95 fifth graders. We still have kids who have no friends. That's just reality. It doesn't feel good, but going to a larger class is not going to guarantee friends. And the flip side too of this, which is just one thing I've been thinking a lot about, is, my kids are in small classes and they're interacting with peers they might not gravitate towards, right? They're interacting with peers whose families have different values, who have different political beliefs, and they're really learning to work and communicate with people who are really different from them, and play with people who are different from them and have different values and beliefs. And I'll just go big picture here. I think our world would be a lot better if we had more people and adults who practiced that and were able to sit across the table and talk about a book with somebody who doesn't have the same belief as them. And when you're in a small school, you're kind of forced into that. So I would just really hope that the board considers some of these other creative ideas to work with Turtle Island and keep 5th and 6th grade here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, so let's go about 5 more minutes, and then I'll do a quick, there's still a way for us to get some more information from you, I'm sure, but Lila's had her hand up, and yes, somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Sorry.
Thanks. I'm Del Waterhouse. I taught here from 1986 till 2011. And I love this school so much. And I live in this town. My children and 2 of my grandchildren all went through Doty. And it's amazing to sit here and listen to this. I just feel so touched by what a caring and thoughtful community I'm a part of. So it's great. And I have a brain or a mind that it's like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, and that makes sense. And so I just, at this point, the question that I wanted to ask was Gillian and Phoebe, is that? Yeah. I'm wondering the possibility, the opportunities are sort of what's keeps coming back for me. And I'm just wondering what you're thinking in terms of actual collaborating, conversations between the 2 groups.
Right. So I have been, my brain is spinning about that, and we actually had reached out and talked to Rebecca Webb, who is sort of the area, I don't know if she's got a real title, but she's like the pre-K Act 166 guru. And apparently I need to brush up on some of the laws because some of my ideas weren't quite legal. But details. Here's what I see as exciting possibilities is I see, first off, I see possibilities for expansion as other schools' populations decline, and decline in such a way that they can free up space. You sort of have to get to a certain point. One of the issues with Rumney and the primary and the classrooms that they have available is whether or not they have classrooms to give up that are pre-K licensable. That's sort of one of the questions. Those are the kinds of things that have to be taken into account. But looking at things like how do we think about education from birth on, and how do we look at one of the things that I see and I've seen over and over and over again is oftentimes students who qualify for EEE services, it can be a struggle for them to receive all of the EEE services that they're entitled to because of the difficulty of getting the providers to a private preschool. So as what Rebecca said is that this flexibility is coming, but with Act 76, and I didn't really understand it, and I feel like I don't have to understand it until she tells me we can do it, is we would have an opportunity for district staff to provide EEE services, which are federally reimbursed, special ed services for our youngest and some of our most vulnerable learners. And they would be able to integrate them so that they would be able to get the speech language, they would be able to get the occupational therapy, they would be able to get the specialized instruction. That's hugely exciting to me because it gets kids to kindergarten in a better, more solid place. Other things sort of have thought and wondered about is, wouldn't it be cool if we had a system whereby preschool students, regardless of where they went to school, were able to access sort of guidance services, and we're able to do some friendship skills and building, because one of the things, honestly, that we're seeing a lot with post-COVID, particularly with 3- and 4-year-olds, is the lack of socialization that happened because we didn't want to die. So that how do we kind of build those sorts of things into the programming, into how we reimburse, into the structure, how that works, and how do we take the gifts that a place like Turtle Island, or some place that is so, their lens is birth to 5. And that's what they see, and that's what they know to look for, and that's what they see. Our lens, well, now for me, it's kindergarten through 8th grade, because that's where I've had most of my professional experience, is I see things as a former middle school teacher that elementary school teachers don't see. Elementary school teachers see things that I don't see. And partnering with an early child care center, they can see things that we can't see. And then what are the I could go on, but like what are the opportunities and stuff for kids to share their learning with each other and have authentic audiences, which is really key. And that was one of the things that honestly made me feel really pretty kind of jazzed. I don't know what we can do because I don't know what's allowed, but I know that I see a lot of possibility.
Can you ask?
Hello.
One second.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to go?
Yes, keep online.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I was told you to. My name's Kathleen Bookchin. I live in Worcester. I know and admit and appreciate and even like some of the social gains that the 5th and 6th grade students, and I should say I'll have a 5th grader next year, would experience joining a 5-6 community at Rumney. But there are also possibly, I would guess I'll call them unintended, social losses of the move up the hill that I don't know if they've been raised yet. And I also have some confusion on the timeline, and then I'd like to close with the temperature of the student body today. And I will be as quick as I can. And I'm glad I charged my phone. Number one, These are things that are important to me. The loss of the 5, 6 students serving community lunch to the needy and elderly. It's an act that teaches a lot to our youth, that builds strength, and it builds our community. So I'd like to see Rumney and Doty 5, 6 come down the hill for community lunch in Worcester if they should go up the hill in the morning. The second loss that I see with this idea is the ability to walk, ride, or roll to school. Now that increases physical health, mental health, and it also avoids a 30-minute bus ride where trouble ensues, including the use of devices and videos. Something that was mentioned a couple weeks ago, number 3, the loss of eco. I would like you to take those monies with this possible lease and bring eco to all 5 schools. I think currently right now only East Montpelier gets eco. I don't think Kellis gets eco. I don't think Rumney gets eco, and Doty's talking about getting eco. And actually, I apologize, there's a 5th school, Berlin, they do get eco. So I would like to see the monies go to all 5 schools to get eco, because that's important to me. The other loss that we're going to experience at Doty is the loss of multi-age classrooms. Yes, there will be more 5th grade friends up there should they go up the hill, but my son will lose the ability to do 6th grade math in his 5th grade class. And that's his ability right now in 4th grade to do 6th grade math. And so I believe, and actually so does the education community in the nation, in multi-age classrooms. Hold on, my phone died. So that's important to me. So I can go on in a letter more about the benefits of a multi-age classroom. Then there'll be some loss of friendships that he has with some younger kids now, some kindergartners, some 3rd graders, etc. I'm not going to waste my time talking about that. And I think that was my only other loss. But my confusion stems around what is the need for this today. As people have mentioned, we were here last year trying to save our closing school. And I just am very confused. What I heard last night on the Turtle Island call was they're going to save our school. And no, that is exactly what I heard, quote for quote. They were offered this proposal to save Doty. And I didn't know Doty was on the chopping block yesterday. I know it was on the chopping block last year, but I didn't know it was on the chopping block yesterday. So I don't understand this timeline of who is closing this school today. And as also has been noted, there's a lot of plans right now floating around the state, around the country, about what to do with education. And I feel like we're steamrolling ahead here in Worcester and with the Central Supervisory Board. And I don't know what we're steamrolling ahead for with the messy plan. I'd like to slow it down. And I also heard last night that their lease has been extended from June 30th to the end of the summer. So we're not working on the same timeline we were 2 days ago. Is that correct? Yeah. So, and what I also heard last night was the Turtle Island plans to share the library, the fields across the street, the bus, and the food. And it was said last night, any public service that we can take advantage of, we want to. And lastly, I'll close. This is really hard to hear. This is even harder to say. But the way that the current student body was set up in this process, the way that there was crying kids in this gymnasium, the way that there was crying adults in this gymnasium, the kids this weekend in this student body are saying that Rumney sucks. And I wanted to make sure that a child had left this room before I said that. The kids are saying that Rumney sucks. This attitude started here in this building April 17th. So if you are going to steamroll this ahead, excuse me, could you pay attention up at the table? If you are going to steamroll ahead, you need to fix this attitude yesterday, because that's what these children are saying. They're using that language, and it's not respectful, and this isn't a veiled threat. This is just simply scared, because I do not want any of our children saying that. And it's just, I don't even know what to say about that. And you're looking at me with disbelief, both of you. But they are saying that. They're saying that on the street. Maybe they aren't saying it in the office. So, thank you.
My name is Marilyn Martin. I've lived next to Doty for 54 years.
I always appreciate you when you
It's on, but point it like that. I've lived here for 54 years, and I've seen many changes at Doty. Some have been good. I've liked most of them. This one, I don't think is going to work. In the summer, the kids won't be able to use the playground to go down to the river because there won't be anybody here to watch them, because Turtle Island can only watch their kids. And I'm also upset about all the traffic. 48 families bringing kids up here, 17 teachers bringing parking. I don't like the whole idea. Thank you.
There's so many thoughtful comments on all sides of this, and Kathleen is right. The kids are saying that, all these things. I guess what concerns me about this discussion is that we're not talking about whether Turtle Island is good or bad, or whether a small school is good or bad, or configuration. We've got a configuration committee that has to proceed in a thoughtful process. They're debating all this in Montpelier, hopefully in a thoughtful process. We don't know what the education reform ultimately will look like, but I follow it very closely for my work, and I can say that there's no support in Montpelier for small schools. I'll say that again. I don't see any support in the legislature generally for small schools. I don't see how having Turtle Island here at Doty factors in one way or the other to any conversation about larger school districts or closing schools. They say that many small schools will close. I really don't. In fact, if I had to guess, I would say it's the opposite, because we would show that we have found another use for the building, which is what Roxbury is trying to do right now with their closed school. And I'm not ideological about this. I was in favor of the sixth graders going to U32. I think maybe some school mergers in our district, if our district is going to stay the way it is, might be a good idea. But that's not what we're talking about here. There's a lot of utopian things being discussed about community schools, but we need to bring this back to earth. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is an urgent situation from a daycare center that needed space. Apparently space at Doty made some sense. I have serious doubts that it was anywhere near Turtle Island's top choice to come to Worcester, not because of the facility, but just the location. This is something that could work but wasn't ideal. Those are two very different things. We've got a lot of stuff going on at the state level with education reform. We're not talking about configuration of grades here. That should follow in a thoughtful process district-wide. This is a quick resolution to some perceived problem that the district has offered to help with. And it's very quick, and I think there are a lot of problems, both sort of logistically, the sort of boring details like parking, but also at a higher level about equity in the district If we're going to do something with 5-6, let's do it district-wide. Let's have a thoughtful process to do that.
So I realize there are more questions, concerns. We will, I know that we will continue to have conversations. I just want to recap a couple of things that, just to bring us to a close. The lease is one of our biggest pieces that we need to put in front of the board, and we want to be able to get that as soon as possible. But an MOU and the development of that really does require more than just us. And I would also say that I hear loud and clear, we need to go back and look about 5-6. What can we do? I've heard that, and we're going to see what are the possibilities. What can we do? We'll bring you that information as soon as we have it. On what we can do, and that there are a lot more specifics that we need to make clear over the next week to 2 weeks. I don't see the board having a vote on the 7th, but I would say that by the 21st, right, 21st, that we would be moving that way. I do see that there are hands up, and I'm going to say that it's 9 o'clock, and so we're going to close, but I can talk to you offline. If you're welcome to stay and talk to the.
And I think I have a compromise that could work for everybody if I have 2 minutes. Literally.
There is a person over here who
Yeah.
hasn't had a chance to speak yet as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, did you? Oh.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate, we can talk, right? And we can put that out there for the public to see as well. But I mean, we've got to close it at some point in time. It's 9 now.
8:56.
Oh.
Close at 9. 2 minutes. So fast.
Sure.
People shouldn't speak more than once or twice or 3 times. I've not been wanting to speak. I've just been wanting to listen, and I have been listening. But I do really think it's important in closing to say that the children really are looking to the adults here, and we don't all agree, and we all have a lot of big feelings. But if we can just try to be kind and open-minded with one another. I know some students are really upset and saying some negative things. I know my personal student, the first thing she said was, I'll get to be with my friends at Rumney when I move into 5th grade. So it's not universally one way or the other. And I just want to remind everyone that as the adults, the kids are looking to us. It's a hard decision. I don't know where I stand at this moment, but let's just please be really good role models for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't close the meeting. You're the one.
Yeah, so a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second by Chris. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.